Hi everyone, welcome to these self-knowledge conferences. Today we are going to be studying the lecture number 11 of the phase A of our self-knowledge course that, as you know, consists of 50 topics on self-knowledge and awakening of consciousness. If you are not yet part of our WhatsApp or Telegram groups, here in the description of this video, you can find the link to join our groups to receive all the conferences on the self-knowledge course and also complementary material that we share for free, as well as the conferences that we share for free in our groups. And well, in today's lecture, we are going to be talking about soul and spirit and how to fabricate our soul and our spirit. Because actually there is a process that we must do so we can get to conquer that soul and that spirit. Actually, from the first lecture, we've been explaining that we are not just made up of our physical body, but of three parts. That our essence is subdivided into a 97% of essence, right? That is currently trapped within the ego. And that is what we can call our soul or mind. And our 3% of free consciousness, of free and awakened consciousness, which is our spirit, which is our internal guide and our internal guru, right? That will guide us through this process of self-knowledge. And today we are going to be talking about how to differentiate those parts, right? And how to develop them. Okay. So let's start by explaining what is the soul. I already said it is this essence is 97% of essence, but what we must know is that the soul itself is a set of virtues, of powers, of faculties, of forces, and so on that we all have latent in that presently contaminated essence, that 97% of essence. As we do the work of freeing those essences from the ego and of fixing those essences in our spinal cord, then those essences will become freed and awakened, and they will start serving our consciousness. So they will be born in us, those virtues, those powers, those faculties, those forces, and so many other marvelous things. When we talk about virtues, it is because every defect that we have inside ourselves has as its opposite, let's say, a virtue. That is currently trapped within that psychological defect. So as we start working, for example, in eliminating our defect of anger, well, that virtue of the kindness, of patience, of love will be burning in us and developing in us. As we work on eliminating our lust, we will be recovering the virtue of chastity, right? Which is also a power. When we start eliminating our pride, right? That virtue of humbleness will start rising and developing in us as we eliminate, for example, our defects of betrayal. Well, the fidelity is going to be born in us as we eliminate our defect, our thieving eye. Then the virtue of honesty will be broke. So it is important that we understand that we need to work on the elimination of those psychological defects, because only when that is old in us die, then the new, which is those virtues of the soul, can be born in us. But we also must know that all those defects has two poles, a positive and an active pole, and we need to be working on both of them so we can rescue the true virtue, because there are some psychological defects inside ourselves that can try to disguise themselves as consciousness, as true virtue. For example, let's talk about pride. We have this side of the superiority, that delusion of delusion, of grandeur that we all have, in which we feel many times that we are superior than others, that we try to impress, to be more, to be superior than others. And that is, you can say, the active pole, the one that feels that is the must. But we also have inside ourselves the side of inferiority, in which we can think, that we are less, that we are not worthy, that we can't, that we are not good enough, and so on. And that is also pride. That is the other side of that coin. That is pride. So that was in order for us to develop the real humbleness, real humility, then we need to eliminate both sides. And if you reflect on this, you're going to see this, that all defects has these two poles, and that there is this passive pole that we tend to confuse with consciousness, with something superior, but only when we manage to observe that, to see what is behind that, those reactions that we have, those thoughts or emotions that are moved by this side of the defect, we are going to understand that it's actually a psychological defect, not consciousness. And that only when we manage to eliminate both sides, then we can recover the true virtue or of the soul. It will be born in us, right? And also, as I was saying, soul is powers. Yes, because as we do the work of fixing all those essences in our spinal column, we are going to be climbing in the initiations of the first mountain. We are going to be regenerating our physical body, turning it into a solar physical body. We are going to regenerate our vital body, to create our astral body, to create our mental body and our causal body. And with the creation of those bodies, we are going to be receiving some powers. For example, when we regenerate our our physical body that is currently lunar, and we turn it into a solar body, we first gain power over our own internal earth, which is our sexual part, our sexual apparatus. And we also receive the power to govern what is the name of these elementals of earth, the gnomes and pygmies that are the elementals of earth. And when we manage to regenerate our vital body, to turn it into a solar vital body, we gain the power over our own inner waters, that is our energy. We actually achieve a perfect chastity. And we also receive the power to govern the elementals of the water, that are the Undines and the Nereids of the water. Right? When we manage to create our astral body, that is currently only in an embryo, we don't have it like fully created. We receive the power over the elementals of the fire, which are the salamanders. We also gain power over our inner fire, which is our emotions. And we, with that astral body fully created, we receive the capacity or the power to travel to all the stars and astros of this solar system and of this galaxy. And also we can enter that fifth dimension at will, because we already have at that point the body created. When we manage to create then our solar mental body, then we gain power over our own air element, which are our thoughts, our minds, gain control, get balance in our mind. And we receive the power to govern the elementals of the air, which are the sylphs and sylphics of the air, and receive all of their wisdom. Also, we get the power to access that mental world whenever we need it. And when we get to create our solar castle body, then we gain the power to govern all our inner nature, right? All of those elements inside ourselves, even the capacity to create ourselves. And we gain control over the external nature. So we gain the power to govern all the elementals of nature at that point, right? We become true men. We're going to see that. And a true man is one that can rule nature. And at that point, we can do so. And, all those powers we can receive as doing the work of super sex. We are going to explain that in a while also. And, talking about faculties, apologizes for the letters that are not there set. And when we talk about faculties, it is because as we are advancing in these different initiations, we are going to be developing different faculties that are currently latent in all human beings, but that we don't know how to use. We don't have like the consciousness to use, but as we do this work, we are going to be developing a consciousness, right? And that consciousness will allow to manage wisely those faculties such as clairvoyance, or polyvoyance, or magical hearing, telepathy, intuition, memory of past lives, communication with elementals, and so on, right? And we are going to be receiving that as we develop our soul. And when we talk about forces, it is because as that psychic development, of course, with the work on ourselves, some forces, many forces, are going to begin to integrate in us. Actually, in our current state, we are full of weakness, right? We have this sexual weakness, we have an instinctive weakness, emotional weakness, mental weakness, imbalance, right? We even have no power in a word because we have that word so degenerated, right? We have not physical power, a lot of physical weakness, but as we do this work, we're going to be gaining power, forces, right? We're going to have that sexual force, that instinctive force, that emotional force, that emotional power, right? Mental balance, mental force, clarity, intuition. We are going to be having power in a word. So when we talk, we can reach the consciousness of those who are hearing us. And as the word creates, and as we develop our consciousness, we will have the power to create consciously with a word, right? And also physical strength, physical force. So we will be able to do things that neither a thousand men together would be able to do as long as we do this work of developing our soul. Now, the most important part. How is the soul fabricated? Well, we are going to be fabricating this soul, all this set of virtues, forces, faculties, and so on, with the practice of the three factors for the revolution of our consciousness, right? The first factor that we need to be applying is the psychological death. Because with the psychological death, we are going to be saving our energy by eliminating the psychological defects that are all the time manifesting in us, and still in our energies. We are going to be balancing our energy centers as we were talking in the lecture number 4 of the phase A, right? And how the psychological death is practiced. Well, first and the most important thing is to self-observe ourselves at all times, right? And when we are there self-observing, we're going to observe that there are certain reactions in our physical body, certain emotional reactions, sexual reactions, instinctive reactions that we can observe in our tensions, in the sensations all over our body, in everything that we see manifesting in the flesh and the muscles, the nerves, and well. Also, we are going to observe in our mind, right? The desires that arises in us. Also, the things that we want to say, the things that we want to do. That is self-observation. It is absolutely important to know ourselves, right? And when we discover any reaction in ourselves, we're going to judge that reaction to get to understand if that comes from our consciousness or if that is a psychological defect. For example, pride. For example, laziness. For example, jealousy. For example, depression, or any other. Whatever. We have a long list of psychological defects inside ourselves. And when we discover a psychological defect there manifesting, we must understand that it is a defect that holds a portion of our consciousness, and we are going to ask our inner divine mother, which is the force of love of our unconsciousness, to disintegrate that defect. We can beg her mentally, my mother or divine mother, however you feel to say, eliminate this defect from me. And that force of your consciousness is going to disintegrate that detail, that desire, that emotion, right? That anxiety, that tension, that sensation, that desire, that thing that is pushing you to talk, to do things, um, to do things in a mechanic way, for example. And you're going to feel how that, as you ask for death, is disintegrated. And you're going to be freeing your consciousness and freeing yourself, your body, and saving the energy that the defect was coming to steal. Right? And that way, you are going to be freeing the essences that are part of our soul that is currently trapped. And the second factor that we must apply is spiritual birth. So we need to have a stable partner of the opposite sex to practice a superior form of sexuality that we already explained in the previous lecture, and when we are talking of the 7 bodies, right? Because it is in the sexual union that we are going to make that essences to get fixed in our spinal cord, creating all our bodies, right? And the third factor is the sacrifice for humanity, to share this knowledge for free without expecting anything in return with all humankind, without distinction of race, of gender, of wealth. No, to all human beings. And that will give us the merits of the heart to advance in this work, because we can only advance through the works of love that we do. Okay, and that is, as you manage to practice these 3 factors in your life, right, you are going to be seeing the results of this work, and you are going to be experiencing the development of your soul. That is the development of those powers, forces, virtues, faculties, and so on, right? Now let's see, what are the steps to fabricate this human soul? We already have these 3 works that we must do. With those 3 works, we are going to do this work, but there are certain steps that we are going to follow when working in these 3 factors. The first step, obviously, is to receive the objective knowledge. This knowledge that we are receiving here, focused on practice, because as a theory, this knowledge worth nothing. But when you practice, you experience the reality and how marvelous is this that we are sharing with you. Now, there is this old saying that says, out of 1,000 who seek me, only 1 finds me, right? Because out of 1,000 people that are out there looking for something pure, for something free, for something focused on practice, for something that really gives spiritual results, only 1 has the right to receive it. And this due to karma, because there are many people who in their previous existences has received this knowledge, but they have made a bad use of this knowledge, right? And they have betrayed their inner divine mother. They have committed crimes against the Holy Spirit, which is the sexual energy. And for those reasons, they have no right to receive the knowledge in this existence, right? But if you do have the right to receive the knowledge, you already made the first step, right? Now, the second step, which is very important, is to start practicing the knowledge, to start practicing the 3 factors for the revolution of consciousness: psychological death, spiritual birth, sacrifice for humanity. If you have no partner, right, you must be working on a psychological death and sacrifice for humanity, and be asking yourself to give you a couple, a partner who can help you to practice the supersexuality to achieve the spiritual birth. And the third step, once you start practicing, is to start balancing the energy centers. That is very important, because we need energy to do this work. And the only way to have the energy to create those bodies is by working on psychological death from moment to moment, saving the energy of our energy centers so that that psychological defects or eyes do not waste that energy in wrong emotions, in negative thoughts, in sexual impulses, at rushes to reach orgasm and ejaculation, so on, right? And as we go there, balancing our centers, we are going to start advancing then in the process of initiation, right? And this old saying also says, out of 1,000 who finds me, only 1 follows me. And that is because out of 1,000 people who managed to receive the knowledge, 999 take it as another belief, as something interesting and another theory, but they don't decide to practice. And only one of those 1,000 people is the one who start practicing and experiencing, verifying the knowledge, right? And the first step is to already have a stable partner, right? And that partner must be of the opposite sex, because we are going to do creations here. And creations can only be done when those two opposite forces join together in sex, male and female, right? They join in sex to start practicing the suprasex. As I was saying, if you don't have a partner, you must be working on yourself and asking your inner being to give you, to show you in the astral plane who can be that physical person that can help you to work on the spiritual birth. That is very, very important. Once you are already practicing the superior sexuality with your partner, you must make the waters to rise. You know that all of us go to sex to fornicate. That is to spill waters, which is our sexual energy, outside of our body through orgasm and ejaculation. If we want to do this work, we must achieve chastity. That is to never ever spill the sexual energy through orgasm and ejaculation, but to always go to sex to make that energy ascend through your spine to your higher centers. Fill yourself with your sexual energy. That is the sexual practice that we were explaining in the previous lecture. And to reach chastity and is to rise those waters, to make all the time so those waters ascend through our spine. If we are doing so, we are going to live a process which is the starting of the initiatic path. We are going to be igniting in our spinal column the sacred fire of the Kundalini. Internally, I mean in the internal worlds, the astral plane, for example, you are going to receive a silver sword that says that you are already an initiate. That silver sword that we are going to hold in our right hand is going to have this handle and this very, very short blade, because you are just starting the work at that point. But as you go ahead on creating your bodies, on fixing that energy on your spinal column, that blade is going to be growing and growing as you do the different initiations. And that is the seventh step, right? To complete the 5 initiations of major mysteries. That is the regeneration of the solar physical body, of the solar vital body, the creation of the astral solar body, of the mental solar body, and of the causal solar body. And the eighth step is going to be when you are already creating the solar causal body, you will have to choose the path you are going to follow. And that is the hardest decision in this path, because there you must choose between the path of nirvana or the direct path. That is the only path that can take you to a self-realization. But out of 1,000 initiates that manage to climb till that point, 999 chooses the path of nirvana, betraying their own inner Christ and actually stagnating themselves at that point. And only one decides for the direct path. But the one who chooses the direct path is the one that can then go for the 9th step. We must know that when we already create those 5 solar bodies, we already have a human soul. That is the genesis, the creation of that man. Because actually, we are not men. We are only rational animals, right? But to create those that man, we need to work on ourselves. We need to create those bodies to develop a human soul. And then when we have the human soul, that actually is represented in these points in ourselves, where we find the causal body, and we choose the direct path, then we can join to our divine soul that is here in this point. And from that union of human and divine in us is what is called the perfect matrimony, right? And that is the conclusion of the fabrication of the human soul and the union with the divine soul. When we finish this fifth initiation, when we already have a fully created solar causal body, we become true men, real men, right? As I was saying, that is the Genesis. That is actually the signification of the Genesis. Those 7 days of creation that ends with the creation of the man actually is there. Is in the fifth initiations where we need to create our human soul and then develop our and then join our divine soul. And in that moment, yes, we already can say that we fully possess a human soul. At that point, we will have all those virtues, faculties, forces that comprises our soul. Well, but now let's talk then about the spirit. Here you can see all the initiations, how the silver sword is going to be developing as we form those bodies in us. And when you finish the creation of the soul, you're going to have a long length, the length of your spine. Actually, this sword. Okay, and well, let's talk then about spirit. This spirit is firstly mainly composed of these parts. First, the human soul that we at that point we already developed, that is represented in a triangle that goes up. The divine soul hailing us is here in the pituitary gland, and that is represented by the triangle that goes down. And when they join together, they formed the six-pointed star. The 6-pointed star that represents the perfect matrimony or the union between the human and the divine. And that a human soul is esoterically called manas, right? This divine soul is called buddhi. And here we find the Christic principle that is developed there, that is called Atman, which is also our innermost. So that is the second triad of the Kabbalah. And actually those are the forces that forms our spirit. Now, the process of creating our soul was the first mountain of initiation. And now the process of developing our spirit will be the process of the second mountain of initiation. That is where the development of the spirit will occur. And in that second mountain, we are going to be there. Then, developing totally all our 7 chakras, right? We are going to be opening our 7 wisdom, our 7 churches of wisdom, right? Which are the 7 consciousness of our being. And that will give us access to a vast knowledge in the universe, a knowledge about all dimensions, knowledge about all sciences in the universe, and a specific knowledge on the particular vocation of our inner being. Also, we are going to be developing all those powers, faculties, and forces in a higher level, right? Because now we'll have the force to create in the universe. So we are going to becoming gods, cosmo creators, if we achieve to do this work. For this, we must choose the direct path. Most of the initiates did not choose the direct path because this is a very difficult path. The second mountain is the mountain of the Christ. So we internally will have to leave all the process of all the via crucis or the way of cross that lived, for example, Jesus the Christ. Everyone who chooses this path will need to live internally that process, and that is a very, very hard process. But it is the only one that will help us to free ourselves completely, because there in the second mountain, we will be able to eliminate the causal eyes or the seeds of our ego. So we are going to become totally free. We are going to die totally in ourselves to become resurrected, to become immortal beings, right? To achieve the second birth. And all that is going to be developing our spirit, turning us from real men to superman, and then to absolute man. So that is the process of developing our spirit. And well, people, this is the lecture. This is how to fabricate soul and spirit. If you have any question on this topic or on any of the topics of our self-knowledge course, or if you want to share with us, any comments, any insight, you can do so in the comment section. There we will be solving the questions you have, and so on, right? And remember that if you want to join our groups, here in the description of this video you can find the link to join us. And I want to invite you to our next lecture that we are going to be studying next Monday: return and recurrence. And this is the lecture 12, a very interesting topic that will allow us to understand those two laws that governs us: the law of return and the law of recurrence. There we are going to be seeing if there really exists past lives, what is our destiny, and how to modify our destinies. We're going to be understanding things that happens that we call, for example, deja vus, or things that we call premonitions, and so on, by understanding these laws. And well, thank you very much for being here, and see you the next time. Bye bye.